Hey all, sorry about the delay. Okay, let me know if you can hear me. Well, I'll fire up chat here and we'll get rolling. Hope everyone's doing well, staying cool. It is uh, hot here. I should have turned on the air conditioner just to see. This mic's pretty good at not picking up the background. Um, didn't think of that because I am uncomfortable now. Okay, can you all hear me? That'll be the important thing. Mike Berg, welcome to Watch It. Brent Chadwick, Locally Vapes, Ruff McGruff, Justin, thank you for joining us. Stian Halverson, Tech Guy Brian, Mr. Mufu to you, and Saint of the Sinners. Okay, thank you, Mowgli and Brent. Ruff, we'll be talking about that. Morpheus, good evening. Thank you for joining us. Rick Crawford. Hello, Justin Gallo. I don't think I've seen that emoji. Ah, it's just so hot. What a dumb setup. I should have turned on the air conditioning. Forrest, hello. Peter Lopez. Jimmy James, 1976. Thank you for joining us. 10,000. Love you too. Thank you for joining us. Don't tell my girlfriend, though. It must be a secret affair. So we'll dive right into things. We've got today, it's just going to be the clutch with a Goon 1.5, just with some 70 VG with a touch of mint since it's pretty hot. And got a bunch of goodies to show everyone. Since who asked about this? Ruff McGruff asked about that, the heavy hitter mech. That who knows if that's in focus or not. Um, so this is in for testing. Hopefully, testing it soon. And I tilt up the glasses a little bit more. No reflections, and have to give it a good cleaning because it's a little bit darker. But looking forward to testing that. I like the setup on it. One nice thing about it is it's a quarter turn to get the bottom on and off. Not a lot of threading or anything like that, and constant contact, and two different diameter top caps you can unscrew and screw. Both hybrid though, no 510 pin. Though they did say, I think in their intro videos or one of the live shows, that they're thinking about putting a maybe coming out with a 510 pin thing later. If that's what you're looking for, 510 pin top, then let them know. Let Tenacious TX Vape, Stan, or Heavy Metal Vapor, my brain, know that that's something you would buy. Not, oh, I'm interested, that you would pay money for it. And then, let's see, starting to get in some greases for mech testing. Just a basic dielectric, which means insulating grease, mostly for smoothness. Anyone that says you get better performance with a dielectric grease, it can't. It's an insulator. Loctite's copper-based. It's an anti-seize lubricant, but copper in it, so it can be conductive. How much? I don't know. It's like $40 for the high silver-based one. I don't know if I'll be getting that one. Uh, but I've got a bunch of others, Noalox and Deoxit and some others I'll be testing too as funds come in, and I start gathering them all up, and I'll just do a big test. And then I'll be testing the Freemax. These two are going to be Patreon giveaways, but I'll be testing another two for their smart load feature, where you can put the batteries in any way, including one battery or two for the 200 watt device, and going to open it up, do a little teardown, take a look at what's going on inside, the engineering and stuff on that, because there is some innovation here. And yeah, I don't know if it's the first mod that's ever done it, but it's the first mod that I've had that's ever done this kind of non-polarized battery input. So I'm going to do a video on it. Then we've got 3,000 milliampere hour 18650s, which are still probably the most popular battery out there in terms of just combination of performance and capacity. More people buy these, I think, than almost any other. Remember, high power vapors, ultra low power vapors. That's a very tiny segment of the small segment that is the enthusiasts and hobbyists. Most are buying this because you get a decent rating. There are a lot of them available. I'll be testing, comparing performance of the HG2, BTC6, Samsung 30Q, Home Life V4, the eFest, excuse me, 3000, the Home Life V4, and the VapCell K30, comparing performance. And then they're going into the battery cyclers. I have to do up a bunch more of these. And I'll be putting them through cycle life testing. Probably take about 2 months. My patrons know about it as it goes on, but everyone else, in about 2 months, I'll have results because all these are fairly close in performance. Uh, but they can be pretty different in price and certainly in availability. Like HG2s are getting much harder to find now. But which one actually holds up? You're making a good investment. And if they're all about the same performance, what can help differentiate them? Cycle life. Will it start fading after 200 cycles, or can we start thinking about 1,000 cycles or something like that? Because we don't discharge them and charge them, because we don't discharge them all the way down. So that thing where, oh, you got 300 cycles. No, you should be getting 500, 1,000, something like that if you're not abusing them. And then those are all the goodies for this week. Busy week, lots of testing, lots of cleaning of the heavy hitter tonight. We'll see when I actually get the testing started. I'll just put it in some Ziploc bags. And locally vapes, yes, that is it. Dielectric means insulating. So dielectric grease literally means insulating grease. It's a grease that is designed to be used for high voltage electrical use because it insulates and won't allow the electricity to arc through the grease. So it's actually designed for its high insulation qualities, its high resistance to current flow. Excuse me. Massive allergy, hay fever kind of stuff. Have to do some vacuuming today. Take a look at chat here. The Watcher, thanks for joining us. ACC 1079, good evening. Ben Halton, which Molicel 21700 is good for a mech mod? There is only one Molicel P21700, the P42A that you mentioned. So that's the one that's very good for mech mod. The Samsung 30T hits a little harder at the start, but the 42A from Molicel will hit harder after the first third or so and run for a little bit longer. A lot of people may not notice the difference. Scott Bogfoot, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Oh, Justin, thank you. Part-time vapor, will I ever test the Kennedy Vindicator with the stacked sections? If some funds show up, so I can buy that, but otherwise, no plans to test it. I just don't have the money to buy all the extra parts and different options and stuff. So no plans to test it, but if I come into some money somehow, that would be something that I would enjoy testing. It'll add a drop, but not as much drop as the Kennedy itself, which what I remember is 2.8 watts, 2.4 watts or something like that, a power at about 105 watt vape. So maybe a 2% drop in performance. Jairam Canizares, good morning from the Philippines. Thank you for joining us. Rick, thank you for reminding me. Yeah, anybody with a question, battery space mooch. You don't need a hashtag, you don't need an @ symbol, nothing at the beginning, just battery space mooch, the beginning of your question. That way it's a nice red tag and I can see it. Scott Bogfoot, how does polarity protection work? How do it know negative from positive? Well, polarity protection works with essentially a version of something called a diode. It's an electric component that only allows current to flow in one direction. So if you've got a device where current's supposed to flow through it in one direction, because that's the way you put in the battery and that's the way it operates, you can put this diode in, so if you put the battery in backwards, it doesn't flow in the reverse direction and fry things. It'll only flow. Essentially, it's a one-way street for electrons. Now, the other half of your question, how does it know negative from positive? You can just measure the voltage and say if the voltage, you can have separate circuitry, or you can condition, um, you can use a diode to let voltage through or not. You don't need, it's a big topic. I'm trying to think how I can, essentially, you've got circuits that are set up to detect zero voltage, negative 4.2 voltage, or positive 4.2 volts, excuse me. And from there, you can know whether, like for the Freemax, the Maxis mods, which can put the battery in either way, it can know, oh, okay, that's in reverse. I'll do this essentially internally. There are other ways you can set it up that if you're not doing as sophisticated stuff as the Maxis, you can set up a very simple circuit with four components that no matter how you put the battery in, it'll reroute it so it's the correct polarity. But that won't handle two batteries being put in different ways or one battery only and stuff like that. So the Maxis is more complex. It uses, I believe it was a Vapor MacGyver showed me a photo. I think it was 14 MOSFETs, which are electronic switches used to route essentially all the different combinations of the one or two batteries and how to get those flipped and also to shut down in case of a problem. Van Helton, where is a reputable place to order, I guess, P42A batteries? Description section of this video. I don't know if I have a list of vendors there. If not, I'll have the link to my blog at ECF, and there is a list of vendors that a lot of vapors use. Or you can go to my Mooch page on Facebook. The pinned post at the top has a list of vendors that a lot of vapors use and trust. Lynn Smith, hello. Thanks for joining us. Oh, Mowgli Vapes, thank you. You took care of that. Did I mentioned it last week. Did I mention that last week? Still trying to find people who've seen the movie Vivarium, because I really enjoyed it, sci-fi, and it's a really screwed up movie. Not screwed up, but it makes you think a lot about society and things like that. And I just not no one's seen it, and I'm like, all right, I want to talk about this. What else did I catch? Oh, I finally downloaded the last Star Wars. I'll start watching that tonight. Yes, I haven't seen it yet, but I didn't hear great things about it, so I was thinking, eh. And then Mowgli, yeah. Mike D, thank you for joining us from Louisiana. Justin, thank you for the list there. Mr. Mufu, to you, good day. Otherwise, what have I been catching? The F1 racing has finally started, back onto that again because it's just so much technical. I'm fascinated by the technology and stuff there. The races themselves, eh, I'll watch the highlights, but the races themselves, I won't sit through that. But technology of the cars is incredible, especially the hybrid power units, electric and internal combustion mixed together, and the extraordinary performance I can get from it, and the sensitivity to the tiny things aerodynamically. It fascinates me too. I don't know much a lot about that. I'm just fascinated by it. So, but yeah, I'm surprised I got as few, um, or say, or as little problems firing up YouTube tonight because past couple of days I'm having tremendous problems with it. Just starting up the YouTube app, and it sits there for 15 seconds before it loads up the recommended or lets me do anything. I was really worried about tonight. Scott Bogfoot asks, when a battery manufacturer is initially charging up a batch of batteries, how much power would that process consume and how many batteries would they charge at once? They can charge several thousand at once. It can be an entire factory floor, thousands, tens of thousands of batteries at one time. Um, that can use an extraordinary amount of power, but you're not charging them up really, really quickly. The first charge a battery gets, what's called the formation charge or the forming charge, is the most important charge it'll ever get because when you first add the electrolyte and negative part of the battery actually eat each other up. They react badly together, and the the end result is a bunch of debris that forms a layer between the two. Now that layer is fantastic because it keeps the battery from destroying itself and just decomposing the negative portion and the electrolyte, the liquid in the battery. But if it sets up an insulating layer there between them, now the battery won't function because the ions can't get through all the junk that's between them. So by very carefully charging the battery, doing this formation charge, you can get that layer to develop, but make sure the layer is thin enough and porous enough the ions can get through, but the electrolyte doesn't destroy the negative part of the battery, the negative battery goop. So they'll do it slowly. They do it incredibly carefully, and then they test the battery after that, and it's all done in this automated machine, just tens of thousands of slots, floor to ceiling, unbelievable heat. From I've heard from people who go there just because of all the power. So it could be megawatts of power that they could use. Now, some of them are using batteries, big battery storage systems. So they're not just drawing that from the grid to charge the batteries, but as they charge and discharge the battery as part of this formation charging, they can put it, they don't just dump it all, the discharge out as heat, but they can charge back up some big, let's say, lead acid batteries, and then use those to recharge the batteries again, essentially recover the energy that's used. And that can help reduce the heat and certainly helps reduce their electric bill. And a lot of it depends on the size of the manufacturer. Samsung might charge, I don't know, tens of thousands of batteries at once, but a company like Yangtze New Energy Company might only charge 1 or 2,000 or something like that. I've seen, oh, who was it? Home Life, wherever they get their batteries made from, uh, had pictures of their formation rooms, and that's somewhere in Asia, or at least for the factory that they used. And they showed the forming rooms, and there were several just for them that looked like thousands of cells. And that's a smaller company. Part-time vapor. I have two 28 millimeter and the stacked sections at my house copper and SS. At my house, copper and SS. I could send one or both to you to test as you send it back to me if you're interested in testing them. Um, oh, oh, is this the stacked section for the Vindicator? I'll never remember, folks. You got to repeat everything. Um, right now, just because of the going back and forth, thank you for the offer, but I do have a big backlog and stuff. Um, let me just take a screenshot of this. Let me give that some thought because it's just the back and forth. I'm completely overwhelmed with what I'm doing now. And also, I hate to get anything for anybody because if anything happens to it, then it's just all kinds of trouble. Even if it happens during shipping and it's not my fault, someone's really, really angry. So I just don't like to do that where I have to return anything. And I hope you can understand that. But thank you for the offer. I'm going to give that some serious thought. But I mean, the power loss is going to be somewhere between 0 and 2.8 watts. And it's 2.8 watts isn't, or 2.4 watts, whatever it is. It's not that much on there. I don't think it's going to be noticeable difference. And you just have to keep all the threads on both ends and all the parts incredibly clean, cleaner than you think you need to clean them, and very tightly screwed on. You have to be able to get it undone, but a tighter threading them together will make for a better connection. Justin, good point too. Yeah, if there's anything used, if the threads are worn down even just a little bit, that gives me different results. Maybe better, maybe worse than what the new stack sections might give me. So it'd be a variable that I'd have to tell people, well, if these are used, I don't know how much that affects the results. And a lot of people go, well, hell, why should I even watch the rest of the video if we're not sure what we can do with the results? Good point, Justin. Thank you. Mr. Rossi, I'm in a disagreement with a buddy. He's using a double regulated mod, I guess 2-cell regulated mod with 10 amp batteries running 120 watts with 0.05 coils. Well, the coil resistance doesn't matter in a regulated mod. it has no effect on battery current. If I put in, let's say the mod can fire a 0.01 coil. If I fire a 0.01 coil at 1 watt, the batteries are being run at, half an amp. There's no problem. You're not getting any vapor, but there's no problem. It's the power setting that determines how hard the batteries run. So the 0.05 coils, if the mod can fire it, that doesn't matter. That has no effect. A 10 amp battery, you triple the current rating of the battery, the genuine continuous current rating of the battery. So if it's a 10 amp battery, you triple that to get the approximate wattage you can run it at before hitting the rating. 10 amp battery times 3, 30 watts. 2 battery mod, 30 watts each battery, so that's 60 watts. So at 60 watts, he's hitting the ratings of that battery. Since he's running at 120 watts, he's double the rating. So he's running those batteries at 20 amps. That's shortening the life of the battery. It's increasing the risk of something going wrong, and it's giving him a miserable vaping running time because the battery sag, the voltage sag is going to be so huge. He's getting that's a lousy way to use that device. Use 20 amp batteries, LG HG2s, or Molicel, 25 amp battery, and get much better efficiency, much greater vaping time, less risk, and the batteries will last 2, 3 years at least. Justin, thank you. Whoops. Looking to see. I keep thinking I have something else to show you guys. I mean, there are other goodies always going on in the other room. That must be it. Wow, I took this. I swear this has gotten darker just since I took it out this morning. I can see. I thought I wiped off all my fingerprints from yesterday when I put it back in the Ziploc bags last night, but I can see my fingerprints now on it. So they're appearing just from being out in this humidity and the air in just it's been less than an hour. Luckily, it comes with a really nice microfiber cloth. It's just something to use constantly, or just let it patina. But for me, yeah, already my hands are smelling. So I'm gonna get a black one, and this one, if I don't destroy it in testing, will go to one of my patrons because I get copper hands. Part-time Vapor, you are welcome. Yeah, nope, I didn't see any big battery news this week. The normal, we've made a miracle battery kind of thing, and we hope it'll work someday. Always look, when you see battery, a lot of people forward me things saying, "Hey, look at this new battery development or something," and I almost always say, read it carefully. If they say things we hope to have, it seems like we're confident of. All these things that indicate they don't have that yet. It's not a commercially available thing. It's something that uh, they're heading towards, they hope to have, maybe in 5 to 10 years, it might appear in a battery. But the commercialization process for these new developments is brutal, absolutely brutal. And remember, what we use now and for a battery is all that made it through the process of commercializing and development for all the miracle announcements made 2, 5, 10 years ago. There were just as many announcements then, but what we have now is the only thing that made it all the way through because of cost or cycle life or you have to build a whole new factory. Some great new battery developments are fantastic, but they can't work with the existing processing lines with just a chemistry change or change the thickness of something or something like that. You have to have a fundamentally new factory built, and companies are like, Why would we do that? It's not an option. We're not going to spend several $1 million to hope we can sell a lot of these or just sell a few of them because it's for a niche application. It's an ultra high capacity battery, but terrible current rating or something like that. Scott Bogford, what is the distant future for portable power? Hydrogen cells, on-demand solar, or do you think it'll just be batteries as we do now? Don't know, and no one else knows, and that's important. It's great news, makes for great articles for people to just kind of guess, but no one has any idea because so much of it is not just the technical developments, which are slowly evolving over time, but it's who's going to step up and make the monster investment, like electric cars. Well, fantastic idea. recharging them's a total pain in the butt, even if we get, driving range up fairly high. So someone has to say, you know what, we'll spend $20 billion to do that. Or the federal government says, here's a new charging station standard. You folks can use it or not. We're going to build 100,000 of them across America. Now you've got some fundamentally different things happening and demand for electric vehicles and the batteries that power them and stuff like that. Um, On-demand solar, I think that's always going to be very expensive. Solar, that's an individual house kind of thing. I don't, it's so limited in terms of where you can put in a solar farm. I think they'll get better at storing the electricity from solar, wind, wave power because they won't be using lead acid batteries anymore. They'll use lithium-ion. Hydrogen cells, I think that's going to be a niche application. Boy, do you have some safety issues with that one. Um, just, I don't want fuel cells or hydrogen in any car that I might be in because, yeah, in a crash, you just got, liquid hydrogen flying everywhere. Oh, no, thank you. Uh, I mean, the hydrogen itself is inflammable, but you get the right mixture with air and you've got big problems because there will be a spark somewhere. Sid, thanks you for joining us. Sean Damerel, hello. Steve Gwynn is letting his car patina. It's getting a nice green hue to the brown now. His car? Interesting. Why rate? Battery space mooch in the front, please. Do you know what the battery life would be of a Tesla vehicle? They tell you in the specs for the car. Um, I actually, I might have known that number, but they use it incredibly conservatively because you know, they're not going to give you the life of the battery pack for it to go all the way down to 50% drop in performance in range. They may say, hey, 15% drop in range, you can go this many miles and or X number of years, because you just can't put the car in the garage and say, well, it's 0 miles, it'll last 100 years. No, there'll be a certain number of years. It's a calendar life for the battery pack also. And I don't know what the spec is. Freestones, hello, thank you for joining us. Mowgli Vape says consumer solar panels on your pack when hiking. How many milliampere hour could get stored over the course of a sunny day? Well, you might be able to get like 1 watt, decent sized solar panel, always at the right angle, always facing the right direction, which you're probably not going to do. Maybe 10% of the time it's going to be facing the right direction. But let's say you got 1 watt coming in on something. If you got a really big thing hanging off the back, you get 5 watts, and 5 watts per hour, 5 watt hours. Um, you know, Maybe you've got a 5 volt output from it, USB output, and you could charge. So that'd be about 1 amp you can get out of it, out of a big 5 watt panel. So it's not a lot. Solar, it's much better, once you're encamped to set up, a big panel and, exactly the right angle and stuff. During hiking, I don't know if you're going to get range from it, but I know people have done this. People have looked at these numbers, and I bet you online is your answer. Freeze tones, I'm glad you be able to catch a live. Mowgli, yeah, yeah. It's really for solar. Yeah, I mean, you'll catch a few rays um, to maybe top off a phone or something like that. But otherwise, it's a great, campsite thing. Set up in the roof of the tent or some other place there, facing the direction where it can get the most sun. Justin Gallo asks or says, I have several batteries I am not currently using. Should I be charging them every so often? Well, I'd recommend just cycling through all your batteries. Let's say you're using 8 and you have another 8. I'd cycle through the 16 because then you don't have to worry about keeping them charged and keeping them stored carefully and stuff like that. Uh, Let them, yeah, they can probably go a year without recharging, but you want to bring them down to about roughly 50%, roughly halfway. It doesn't matter, 40, 60, doesn't matter. And then every couple of months, check the voltage, make sure they're still roughly around 3.6, 3.5, 3.7 volts or something. Any batteries that are self-discharging very quickly means they're damaged internally. You think about replacing them. Otherwise, I recommend cycling through all the batteries, because then you don't have to worry about any of this tracking voltage stuff. Mowgli, good point. Yeah, you've got delicate, expensive panels. Now, some people go through a ton of electronics, and they just cannot be away from the electronics when they're camping, and they'll, get a nice expensive setup and set up some really good panels. What is it, Zero or something Zero? Has some nice stuff. Perky Nips Review Kitchen. Interesting name. I noticed my 30Qs seem to lose power slightly when they get to 50% charge when vaping at 30 watts. Is this normal? Well, yeah, any battery at half charge is going to have more internal resistance. The voltage sag is going to be getting down to the point because the voltage drops every time you take a puff. And if you're already down to 50%, when you take a puff, you're dropping down to the point where the device will go, whoa, that battery's empty. Oh, okay, it went back up. Whoa, the battery's empty. Oh, okay, it went back up. But it might scale back the power level when it sees the low voltage and scruffy day, forgot to shave. That kind of weekend. And now it's getting itchy again. Um, so that's normal. If a single battery of 30 watts 50% charge. Yeah, you might notice, yeah, some mods might scale back the power, or if you're in a mech, certainly you're going to definitely notice a loss of power. Yeah, Saint of the Sinner's battery hookup. They've got all kinds of stuff. The battery packs, recovered Tesla 3 packs, 4800 milliamp per hour, or cells, 9.6 amp. Now, you never know. I recommend never using those for vaping. Number one, maybe use a 10 amp cell, but you just have no idea the internal condition of those cells. None. Um, have they been over discharged too much? Are dendrites forming inside, internal short circuits, things like that? It's not a 9.6 amp rated cell anymore, that's for sure. And you just don't know what kind of damage it suffered. Thanks, Justin. Yeah, Sean. Good point. The whole point of camping is to unplug and reset. Well, some things like GPS, or if you're doing winter camping or something like that, you may have the avalanche um, alerts, and those might have to be recharged. They shouldn't be. Why do you have to recharge unless it's already gone off? But so that's a bad example. But things like GPS and other things you might use, I can see people, or small lights, USB lights. I can see that you might want to recharge them during the day, and then you've got small lights or even USB lanterns that to simulate a fuel lantern, and to be able to have those at night. But I've always liked to use a fire for the light. But I can understand in the tent, middle of the night, you want just a little tiny light available. Maybe you got to recharge that. Forrest says when one of a married set of batteries starts taking longer to balance, sometimes 10 to 15 minutes longer, what does that indicate? Well, it means that the voltage is starting to, they'll start off the same charged, but as you use them, one will discharge faster than the other, and then they have to be balanced again, and then they may be balanced here, or they may not be balanced until they're fully charged again. But if they're diverging more and more, this much, and then, a month later, that much, maybe there's a 0.05 volt difference, after using them for a while, but then a few months later, that's a 0.1 volt difference between them. That means one of the cells is reaching the end of its life. It's damaged, or it's damaged. Um, and it's time to start replacing that cell if you notice the gap growing between them. There'll always be some difference between them. Every single battery is just a little bit different. But when that gap starts growing, that's an indication that one of them is reaching the end of the life. Replace that battery, use that other battery in a single battery device or a fan or a flashlight or something, and get a new marriage set. XTRM Brazen, I answered that question at the beginning. Freestones, I don't know if that's for me, but I happen to catch it. I'll just read it and see if it is. Do you think that if vaping was held in good stead, that battery companies would endorse more, particularly amps for safety and use? Sorry if this has been asked before. It hasn't been asked before. Good question. I want to make sure I understand it though. Do you think that if vaping was held in good stead, okay, that battery companies would endorse more? amps for safety and use. No, not the major manufacturers, because there is no benefit to supporting use of cells outside of a fully protected battery pack. That is a banned, not allowed use by the manufacturers because it's just too risky for them. It is. These batteries are not made to be used outside of protected battery packs. So they'll never endorse it, ever. It doesn't matter about vaping. They don't endorse it for flashlights, for any use. We're the ones blowing ourselves up though with the batteries. The flashlight users aren't doing things like that. The DIY Powerwall community rarely does it, because everyone else is a lot more conscious, or they're not abusing the batteries the way we do. So the big companies know, and the smaller companies say, heck yeah, use it for whatever you want. So I don't think anything would change if, let's say, vaping was, completely accepted and encouraged by the U.S. government, or and a lot of other governments also. I don't think anything would change with the major manufacturers. Gregory Turner just got here. Did you get the heavy hitter yet? I addressed that at the beginning, and I don't want to keep answering the question, because just 4 posts up from yours, Gregory, is someone else asking, and then I asked earlier because other people keep joining. But ta-da! Um, hopefully to test it soon. But yes, I got it. I should probably post online because I'm being asked everywhere all the time. That's exaggeration, but I'm being asked several times a day, if I got it, and I should have posted last night everywhere that I did get it, and that I hope to test it soon. Remy, thank you. Thank you for the thank you. Justin, thank you. Forrest, thanks, Battery Mooch. I have the same problem with the 3-cell LiPo I used for an RC car. Um, you're talking about voltage changes? Okay. Yeah, but hopefully using a balanced charger, and that can help extend the life by using a balancing charger, significantly extend the life. Gregory, no problem? Yeah, I'm interested to see what happens with the results. Got to give it a good cleaning, get it in some Ziploc bags, and then hopefully, I'm hoping I can test it tomorrow, but we'll see. A lot of other things going on. Brad Palmer, what I want to know is who first thought that the current round cell design is a good idea, plus or minus just a millimeter or two apart? Well, remember, inside a protected battery pack, never touched by human hands, the cells never moved, never touched, never handled, that having the positive and negative on top means nothing. They were designed that way for ease of manufacture. It's just a lot easier to draw. They take a flat disc, squeeze the disc so hard it goes bloop, stretches out into a can, stuff everything into the can, and crimp over the top. You do some other things. You put the neck on it, then you put the stuff in top. You spot weld. You fill it with electrolyte. You crimp the top. Da 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 da. But it's easy to manufacture, and since it was never supposed to be touched by human hands, except maybe to load a machine up or to line them up, for automated pack manufacture, they never thought it'd be any problem. Which is why they're not allowed to be used, quote unquote, outside of a battery pack, because they weren't designed to ever be handled or used. And the thin wraps and things like that, as opposed to making it, with a hard plastic shell, or really thick, tough wraps or something if they knew they were going to be handled. And now, no one can come along and change the standard. No one can say, well, we'll take 18650s and we'll use really thick wraps, so they're 20 millimeters thick, but now everyone has to redesign their devices. And no, that's not going to happen. Since they're not selling the batteries, they're not worried. They'll sell the devices, and it's you who takes the risk. And maybe you can go after a battery company in China, if the cell explodes on you. But the device manufacturers are like, there's no benefit to us, trying to get a new battery. Craig F., any thoughts on the Patreon thing? Well, right now it's not a thing. Patreon either lost a lawsuit, or they're got to maybe pay a lot of money. There's a lot more that has to happen, but potentially, yeah, it can be bad for Patreon. But a lot of lawyers will be involved, a lot of things that have to be decided. Right now, it just barely, yes, they lost the lawsuits, but now we got to take months to who knows how long, I think, before we find out what the repercussions are. I know a lot of people are telling me, Mooch, you better get off Patreon. And I'm like, why? It's still here. Nothing's happened to Patreon yet. Could something bad happen? Yes, and I will be looking into alternatives because the my patrons are an important part of supporting my testing, and making it possible for me to pay a few bills so I can have time for testing because I don't have to do my day job for about 1 week out of every month, and that I can pack in a lot of testing for that. I spread it out a day or two each week. Uh, and I'd like to be able to keep doing that. If I lose Patreon and the no substitutes, okay, then I do one battery test a month, one video a month, and that's it. That's all I have free time for. Scott Bogfoot, batteries were the worst design of a battery. Gumstick batteries were the worst design of a battery ever. Yeah, they're actually the kind of squared off ones, what they call prismatics. They're coming back for a lot of specific uses. But something the size of gum stick, something flat like that, ugh, that's no, that's bad. Sean Demerol, when you handle a brass or copper mech, can you taste the metal or is that just me? I don't taste it, but my hands reek, just reek. And even when I wash, that's why testing the heavy hitter, I'm like, oh, okay. Because even washing and scrubbing, I use a dishwashing brush, the plastic brushes you can scrub a dish with. I'll use that on my skin with soap a couple times, and I still get the copper smell on my hands. Battery space Mooch in the front if you have a question. John Lafitte, which Molly cell should I buy for dual mod if I don't really ever go to 70 watts, so 35 watts each? I don't know what size you can fit, but I'll pick 18650. There's only one, and there's only one 21700. So your options are simple. P42A for 21700. It's the only one available in that size. P42A, P26A for an 18650. It's the only 18650 Molly cell available. So it's really easy. It's just size. Um, I would say if you're 35 watts, 70 watts total in a dual device, then I'd say go for like a Samsung 30Q or a Murata VTC6 and get just a little bit more vaping time. Marty Stein says I should get in touch with the manufacturer of mods and have them make a mod that has the best built-in charger possible. That way we can throw batteries in and just not remove them. Okay. All kinds of things going on behind the scenes, guys, but some things can take months, some things can take a couple of years. We'll see what happens. Dane B just got in here, so you may have answered this already. Dane, yes, I have answered it a couple of times. Uh, Alan Jacobson, still locked down in New York? I don't even look at the announcements anymore. I think we hit phase 4. There's only a couple things that aren't locked down now, but everyone's still being very, very careful. We do not need a resurgence here. Well, actually, no, you get a lot of idiots, but overall, most people still being very cautious. People are still pretty uncomfortable. Even the restaurants are open. You can have outdoor dining. You can't do it indoors. But they shut down a lot of streets, and everyone just set up outdoor dining. Instead of parked cars, you get all the cars out of there. Instead of a line of parked cars, you have two lines of tables down the side of the street. And then people just walk down the center of the street. These are side streets. This isn't Broadway or something. Louis F. Hey Mooch, hope you're doing well. Do you have any experience with the Lush Q4? I think the Lush was one of, no, not the Q4. There was a 2-cell E-Fest a long time ago that just got really, really hot. But no, not the Lush Q4. Sorry, haven't tested it. Davey, okay, never mind. You just answered me. Okay. Sid, I would suggest moving to other Patreon alternatives like Subscribestar. Yeah, I mean that's one of the ones that I was going to look at. Um, Trouble is, Sid, it's great to say, okay, diversify, but now I have to monitor and respond and post on all those different platforms. Let's say I was on 3 platforms. I've got to put all my posts on those 3 platforms, answer questions on those 3 platforms. It When you're already overwhelmed, that's a daunting addition to take care of. So I'd like to just stay on one. even though conceptually it's better to diversify on those, like let's say multiple YouTube type things, if there was a decent alternative and stuff. That's all great, but it's more work and it just becomes really, really hard to do. But you're right. Scott Bodfoot, were you ever into radio as a hobby? Ham, shortwave, CB, etc. Cheers. Thank you, Mooch. Great show. Thanks, Bodfoot. No, no, couldn't afford it on there. And then as I got older, um, technically, the I had the ARRL handbook. I read that cover to cover just because kind of interested in it, and there's a lot of good general electronics knowledge in it too. But I never got into actually having it. Though was I a teenager in the CB craze? I think I was a teenager when the CBs were huge. But I never got into it. Being in New York City and all the rules and regulations and stuff, and having an apartment, and you just can hang a wire out the window. So it wasn't the kind of thing where let's say being out in the boonies, I might be more inclined to go into that just because there's very little around me. But being in the middle of Manhattan, we're always running out and doing a million other different things. Matt Law, would you ever do a test for some of the intermediaries people run on their mods since the two squonk adapters out there? And I've seen other stuff like voltage displays and even fidget spinners. I may not test fidget spinners. That's sarcasm. No way in hell I'm testing those. Um, If I did it when they're popular, I'm not testing them now. Uh, no, unless one of them was really, really popular and a lot of people were using it, then I might test it, like a voltage display or the squonking adapters, the things you can hang off even a mech and turn them into squonkers. But it would have to be something popular, which all my testing is kind of based on. It's based on the number of requests that I'll get. Felix, testing the Galeazzi S4 on DC input that I messaged you about a few hours ago. Using some nickel metal hydride just in case. So far, so good. We'll keep you updated. Okay, Felix, please be careful because you've got, I believe you have a malfunctioning slot 4. The problem is you might say, hell, hey, well, I'm avoiding the part of the Galeazzi S4 that caused it to be recalled, namely part of the AC, adapter high voltage input section to it. But you can still have a malfunctioning charger, short circuit the battery, overheat it, do all kinds of stuff, and you can still have a fire. I would really strongly recommend not using that Galeazzi S4, not using any charger that malfunctions. Just replace the charger. That's just my opinion. Please be careful. Non-flammable surface. If you're going to do this, do it on a non-flammable surface and only when you're around and awake. Sid says, when my grandfather was young, they learned to build radios with screws, copper wire, and other scrap. Now kids can barely use a hammer. I remember for a grade school project, I was like fourth or fifth grade, I did the crystal radio. And you gotta, I forgot what we wound it around. Was it toilet paper roll or a pencil? You'd make the coil. You had a little crystal you could order. And then you had a little tiny piece of wire you sharpen to a point and you probe and poke around the crystal and you had little tiny headphones and until you could hear. And there's capacitors and other stuff there. And you had 9-volt transistor radio battery probably. And you poke around this little crystal until you could hear an actual crystal, until you could, hear a radio station that you picked up. And I remember screaming, I got it, because I was so proud of myself. And no one else in the classroom really cared at all. But I got my credit for science class, so that's cool. Mowgli Vet says TP roll. Okay, built one. And that was interesting. And you feel, I mean, to build your own radio, out of, I don't know, was it $2, $3 worth of parts? That felt incredible. Ding. Thirsty. Whoa. Okay, we've got cat minutes left, 4 minutes left. And then we can all head over to None of the Vape Show for some great topics and amazing content. I think I got Sheehan Halverson. Seems like he has the smelly hands also, copper hands. What is the term for that? I just call them copper hands. Chooky first. Battery Space Mooch at the front. Who has or what are the best battery wraps? Don't know. What's your favorite mod and RDA setup right now? Well, right now it's the clutch with the Goon 1.5. I like the clutch, and I love the Goon. What juice am I vaping on? I mentioned this at the beginning. Right now, I'm just doing 70 VG with a touch of mint because it's hot, it's nasty, and I'm just doing it for the stress relief, the mechanical motion stress relief thing to keep me from wanting a cigarette. Um, Otherwise, yeah, I just don't want a lung full of hot vapor on days like today. Whoa, Sid, your grandfather built radios spying on the Germans, relay the information to the Norwegian resistance. Cool. That's a very cool story. Ian Lau, Mooch, is the Murata VT6A a good battery? Yeah, it's a very good battery. I think it's about a 25 amp battery. Use it 20, 25 amps, keep the wraps in perfect condition, use a good charger, all the normal safety things. Battery Space Mooch, if you have a question at the beginning. Steve Gwynn asked, do you use any Schultz chargers? No. In fact, I haven't even heard of them. Actually, no. That sounds familiar, but it's maybe from a long time ago. I don't know anything about them. Are these round cell chargers? Justin, he said VT6A. Brad Palmer, isn't copper hands a form of electrolysis caused by the sweat and oils on your skin? I don't think it's electrolysis because there's no current flow. There's no electronegative potential difference between metals and stuff, though. So you're putting salt on it. I think it's just I don't know if it's electrolysis. I think it'd just be oxidation and salt corrosion is electrolysis. Maybe, I don't know. But it comes off in my hands and it's nasty as heck. The oils wouldn't do anything for electrolysis, but the salt, I just don't know if it's copper just coming off in the hands or if there's actually a true electrolysis, a true corrosion type reaction that's going on that causes the smell to come off your hands, or whether it's just physical. You know, rubbing anything can get it to come off your hands. Another minute or so. Yeah, Sean, thanks. Yeah, for the wraps, I just don't know. There is a vapes z mods brands. I think the Z's on all of them. I think that's the name, or BB brands. Anyway, there's a thick polycarbonate wrap, but it makes your batteries thicker. So in some mods it won't fit. I have some here. I have to test them. Steve Gwynn, no, not round cell chargers. Okay, so I haven't used them. Don't know anything about them. If they're LiPo chargers, I just don't know. Uh, I have iChargers here that I use mostly the 4010s, what 406s, 6 pluses. I've forgotten the numbers. I'm so bad with the numbers. And I think that is it for tonight. 7:58 will run before Not At A Vape show fires up. They usually fire up a couple minutes early. I want to thank everyone for joining us. I want to thank you for the great questions and for sharing tonight with some fun little stories and help spending a little bit of time in this hot, sticky day here in New York, at least. Hope everyone stays safe, stay sane if you want to, and take care.